The Persnickety Witch of Fiddyment Creek by Gaye, Pollinger. Chapter 5. The dust billowed around the car as Tom drove up the gravel driveway. Pearl was waiting on the porch, and she let him get out of the car and practically raced up her porch stairs. He grabbed her shoulders and gave her a big bear hug. "Hey, Persnick, how you doing?" Tom said. "Oh, Thomas, you handsome man. You haven't changed at all since you were here. How long ago?" Pearl said. She was holding a basket of vegetables from her garden, and Tom took it from her. "Do you think Lucy would like these?" she asked. "Well, sure as shootin'. We especially love tomatoes. Good. But what's this?" He held up an interesting small round vegetable. "Kohlrabi," said Pearl. "Whatty?" "Kohlrabi. It's in the cabbage family. Just try it." "You bet. We'll have a little coleslaw tonight made from your what's-it," he said as he winked at her. She took him into the house to get the trunk, and he skillfully got it out of the car and into the back seat. As the shiny T-bird rumbled down the driveway, he asked if he should put the top up. "Oh, heavens, no," she exclaimed. "The breeze is wonderful. The car is almost as big as mine," she commented. "You still have it?" "The Bentley? I most certainly do, but I haven't driven it in a very long time. I don't even know if it starts." "If you want, I can check it out for you," Tom said. The McGuire household was filled with excited anticipation, and I had a hard time getting the kids to settle down. "They're here," I said to Kathy and Jameson. "Just behave yourselves." Pearl came through the screen door and paused for a moment before she walked into my open arms. Pearl had a tear in her eye as she said, "It's different, but the same. I love what you've done to make it your own. You know, I haven't been in here since the day I gathered your things." "Would you like to see the rest of it?" I asked her. After a quick tour of the big old Victorian home that had been left to me in my mother's will, we went to the back porch where I had lemonade waiting. The porch was screened, and it had cooled off a little from the early afternoon heat. Plus, the ceiling fan was lazily going around and around, moving the air. "Pearl," I began, "I'm wearing the chain and baby ring, and I noticed an inscription with our initials," and I pulled it away from my neck to show her. "Here's my first question, and I probably have hundreds. Your initials are P-O-W, and mine were L-O-B, now L-O-M. What does your O stand for?" "Olivia," she said, smiling, "as does yours. Your mother and I were very good friends, and that's the way she named you after me. She thought that Pearl would be too old-fashioned, and that Olivia was very elegant." Kathy was seated beside me on the porch swing and piped up, "What about your husband? What were his initials?" "Well, Miss Kathy with a C, his name was Willoughby, Oliver Witch, so W-O-W. They're at the top of the general store. They're fading, but they're there. And the fact that our middle initials were both O was purely coincidental." "His initials spell wow, you know," Kathy said with much certainty. "Yes, they do," Pearl said, "and mine spells pow." Pearl made a fist with her hand held up. "Pearl, how long was my mother sick?" I asked. "Well, I think you were a newborn when she found the lump. She let it go and didn't mention it to anyone, not even me. I'm not sure when she finally went to the doctor, but the cancer had already spread into the lymph nodes. She worked for me at the general store on her good days. She had a wonderful older lady that would come here to the house to take care of you. And on some weekends, your daddy was here." Tom came up to the porch and took a sweating glass of lemonade. He held the glass to his face to cool off a little bit before taking a big gulp. "Persnick," he began. "Tom, don't call her that," I said, chiding him. "Honey, I've always called her Persnick, right, Persnick?" "I didn't know you had anything to do with that name until last night. Anyway, Persnick, What was Lucy's dad like? Was he a good guy? What did he do? Why didn't he stick around after Kathleen died? Well, let me put it this way. At that time, he was a car salesman, and he liked the brew and he liked the ladies. When Kathleen passed on, he learned that she had left everything to Lucy in the will. He saw it was an easy out to get his sister here so he could skedaddle. And he definitely didn't like me being here and made that perfectly clear. When Caroline came, she promised him that she wouldn't let me around Lucy, and she kept her word. What's she up to these days? Pearl asked. Oh, she died a couple years ago, Lucy said. Well, I'm sorry about that. The good thing is that she was willing to come and take care of you, and in all fairness, she did a fine job raising you, Pearl said. Pearl, how did you and my mother meet? I asked. It was a hot summer evening at church, a church ice cream social on the square. We were supposed to sit beside someone we didn't know and tell them a lie and also a truth. Later, they were supposed to tell each other the statement, which one they thought was the truth. I sat beside her at the fountain and we took turns. She said, I'm pregnant. I hate roller coasters. And I said, I'm a witch. I was on the Titanic. She didn't know which to believe. And when it was her turn, she explained her dilemma. The little crowd didn't know what to think either, and then finally asked me which one was true. I told them they're both true. My last name is Witch, and I had been on the Titanic before she launched and made her fateful maiden voyage. So you see, it's how you say things that might cause confusion or clarity. Kathleen and I stayed long after the ice cream social was over, and we talked, and we were very comfortable with each other. Before long, the bell tower struck midnight, and we scurried away like Cinderella's mice. Hold that thought, Tom said. Let's eat. May I assist you, madame? Tom said as he stood before Pearl and escorted her to the table overlooking the garden. Mama, Mama, Kathy loudly whispered to me. What am I supposed to call her? Pearl turned and bent down to Kathy's ear and whispered, Why don't you call me Aunt Pearl? I would like that, Kathy with a C. Lucy, how is your lilac bush doing? Pearl asked as she spread the napkin on her lap. I just looked at her while another memory emerged from my brain. I remembered my mother and Pearl planting the lilac bushes as well as many other plants that had grown into gorgeous specimens and now enhanced my yard. They would get down on all fours and dig and giggle and plant and water. This past spring, the lilac bushes were full of blossoms and the fragrance was phenomenal. It's a pity that the lilacs don't last longer. I think I had them in every room of the house, and the peonies were very showy also. Had you and my mother finished planting everything you wanted? I asked. I don't remember, dear, Pearl said. Let's take a look after dinner. Kathy had been taught that when people were finished eating, they were to put their forks with tines down off the right edge of the plate. And she watched with an eagle eye so she could tell if Pearl knew that too. As Pearl placed her fork in the finished position, Kathy looked at me and I nodded yes. She had helped me with the dessert and couldn't wait to show it off. We cleared the table and Kathy said to Pearl in an adult tone when she passed by her, I think you'll enjoy dessert, Aunt Pearl. It's called Flower Sundae. Jameson looked at me with a quizzical expression. He loved to eat flower sundaes. She came out of the kitchen carrying a tray with 5 plastic flower pots, each with a single stem flower. She placed one in front of Pearl, and Pearl's face lit up and her eyes got big, and she said to Kathy, This looks delightful. Tell me, please, how you made the flower sundaes. Well, said Kathy, first you make brownies, and then you break them into pieces in a bowl. And if you make chocolate brownies, then it looks like dirt in the flower pot. And then you add ice cream that's melted a little, and then you stir it up, and then you put some in to the flat plastic flower pots, and then you cut a straw in half, and then you put a half a straw in the center, and then you put them in the freezer, and when you're ready, you take them out and put a flower in the straw. See? It's easy. Oh my goodness, did you think that up? Pearl asked. Nah, it's my mama's recipe, Kathy said proudly. We make fun stuff all the time. After dinner, Tom put the kids to bed while Pearl and I strolled arm in arm through the yard and garden. She stopped to admire many of the flowers, and then she said, you know, your mother and I made a map of the yard and where we were going to plant certain flowers or bushes, and everything seems to be here. But I don't remember doing all this. Do you think Aunt Caroline found the map and finished it? I remember that she spent lots of times out here watering and weeding, but I don't remember she planted anything. Perhaps, I said. Well, no matter. It's beautiful, and I hope you're enjoying it. You're doing a fine job of taking care of it. You must have Kathleen's green thumb. In the living room, Pearl and I each sat side by side, looking at one of the photo albums and chattering away. Tom joined us and sat in the recliner across the room. Pearl, I said, where did my mother's money come from? I never seemed to want for anything. Why didn't she leave anything to my father? Was it passed down from her parents? I mean, what happened to them? Would you know any of that? Oh, good question, son, Tom said. Well, you are full of questions, and rightly so. Some of it I can help you understand. I don't think we'll talk about it all tonight. That's far too much to tell. During her pregnancy with you, and as we became such good friends, she told me about her relationship with your father, which wasn't very good, and that the house had been a gift to her by your grandparents. I suggested that she take out a life insurance policy listing you as beneficiary. Now, keep in mind, at that point, we had no idea that she would find a lump a few months later. And I also suggested that she meet my attorney and write a will which stated her explicit desires. As the months passed and she got sicker and sicker, we knew she was going to die. I told your parents that I would be more than happy to adopt you. By then I had seen your father's true colors, but he wouldn't hear of it. You would stay with the Baldwin family, said he, and that's how Caroline moved in. On my own, I started a trust for Kathleen and her heirs when she died. The life insurance money went into a powwow trust, which I administered. Powwow? You mean like meeting of Indians? I asked. No. Look at the letters. They're my and Willow's initials. But I'm happy to see that it did just as I hoped. When you got monthly checks while you were away at college, they were from Powwow Trust. Really? Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. But of course I never made the connection. Everything was to go to you in stages, but into the trust so that I could guard it. After Kathleen died, your father wanted to leave. He really had nothing, not even a place to live because of the will's wording. And that's when you stayed with me until Caroline arrived, which was just a little more than 2 weeks. Oh, but my, how I loved having you. It was then that I began to invest in stock for you. Also, I have 25 bars of gold in a safe place for you, and at today's prices, that's a lot of money. And even though I honored your father's wishes and didn't get involved in your life, I managed to get involved in those financial ways until you were ready to have me in your life again. Does that clear things up? Yes, of course. Exactly how much money are we talking about? Like hundreds? Thousands? I asked. Oh, heavens, yes. We'll have to go to the powwow office and see. I just made some more investments, which are doing very well, Pearl answered. And now, I should be going home. This has been a perfectly lovely evening. Thank you so much. Thomas, will you do the honors? Yes, of course, Lucy. I'll be back in a little bit. Wait up for me, please. Wow, Persnick, what an evening we've had, he said as he and Pearl left the house. In the car, they both got quiet. Finally, he said, Persnick, years ago, you put a little bug in my ear that Lucy would be a good catch. That's when I started noticing her and watching her and seeing what she was all about and dating her. I fell in love with Lucy the person, and I had no idea she was rich. Do you think she'll change now that she knows she has all this money, Persnick? He said as he glanced at her. Pearl stared at him with a wild, confused look in her eye, and she didn't seem to comprehend what Tom was saying. When she tried to speak, it sounded like gobbledygook. One side of her mouth dropped. Pearl, are you feeling okay? She didn't answer. Okay, young lady, we're going to the hospital. He did a U-turn and drove as fast as he could toward the hospital in the neighboring town. At the emergency room driveway, he laid on the horn, and people in the hospital uniforms came rushing out. They put Pearl on a gurney, and Tom stopped at the desk to give them what information he knew, and then he went to the payphone to call Lucy. Hey, sit down, honey, he said. I don't know exactly what's going on, but Pearl started to act confused, and she had difficulty communicating with me, so I took her to the hospital. I think I may know where she keeps phone numbers at her house, so I'm going to go look and contact Michael, and then I'll come home. I figured you would want to come to the hospital. Oh, yes, thank you. I do. And be sure to tell Michael that we're praying for Pearl and for them. Tom climbed Pearl's porch steps 2 at a time and went into the house. He saw a little desk with a phone on it and opened the drawer. Yes, there was the address phone book. Morgan, he said as his eyes skimmed down the page. Michael, yeah. Michael, this is Tom McGuire. Your aunt spent the evening with us, and when I was taking her home, she wasn't acting quite right, so I took her to Mercy Hospital. No, I don't know what the diagnosis is. The doctors in the emergency room were doing an EKG and hooking her up to oxygen and starting to do some tests. The business office isn't open at this hour, but do you know where she might keep her medical papers? When I get home, Lucy will head over to be with her. He paused for a minute and then said, Sure, whatever we can do to help. I spent the night in Pearl's room, and I was dozing in the chair beside Pearl's bed when Michael and Gaye came in. They stood beside the bed whispering, and I finally realized that they weren't the nursing staff. I stood to my feet and said, Michael, after all these years, I'm so happy to finally meet you, but not like this. And Gaye, I hugged them both. Where are the kiddos? I asked. We left them home. They have summer school today, Gaye answered, but we're close enough. We'll make sure that they get over here soon. They do love their Aunt Pearl. Lucy, have you talked to the doctors? Do you know what happened? Michael asked. No. The nursing staff told me that she was resting comfortably, and they let me stay here all night. That's all I know. They came in several times through the night. Do you know if Tom found the insurance papers? Michael asked. I don't think so, I said. They're probably at the powwow office. I'll go get them in a bit. Is she coherent? Michael asked me. Yes, but there's some mild paralysis on her left side, and her speech is a little slurred. We heard a grunt. Pearl had awakened. Hello, she said with a raspy voice that didn't sound like hers. There were some other sounds, and we all decided that she was happy to see Michael and Gaye. Michael leaned over and kissed her cheek, squeezed her hand, and asked her where she kept her medical insurance papers. At home? No. At the powwow office? Yes. Michael left, and I said to Gaye, You know, Gaye, Pearl and I just reconnected after all these years, and she's told me about the many pieces to the puzzle of my life. You never know how everything's going to fit together, but I'm so glad to have the mystery of the Persnickety Witch solved. Can you believe I caused all that grief? She's waited for you for a long time, Lucy. I, for one, am very glad that part's over. But it surely is funny. Pearl stuck out one thumb as she had means of agreement. While Pearl took her afternoon nap and had more tests, Michael and Gaye came over to our house for lunch and some rest. He found the papers and contacted her personal physician. Jameson and Kathy were polite and not quite sure how to act since they had just spent the evening with Pearl and now she was hospitalized. Gaye and I assured Kathy that we thought Pearl would be fine, but it might take some time for her to complete physical therapy. Kathy had something on her mind and couldn't wait to share it. Mama, could Aunt Pearl come stay with us when she gets out of the hospital? I could read to her and get things for her, whatever she needed. Please, Mama, please. Kathy, I think that's a grand idea. but we'll need to talk to all the parties concerned, okay? I looked at Gail, and she shrugged her shoulders and kind of nodded her head in agreement. Tom just smiled his approval and said, well, we've already got the downstairs guest room waiting for a guest. It wouldn't take much to get it all ready for Pearl. Well, I said, the only votes we need are from Pearl and Michael. All right, you guys, exactly what am I voting on? Michael asked as he came through the back door. Well, if Pearl could stay here for her period of recuperation. I'm not working, and the kids love her. Tommy has marching band rehearsals each afternoon until school starts, but for now that's it. I could help her, take her to the doctor or wherever she needs to go. Well, I take it from the rest of you that you voted in the affirmative, he asked as he looked around the room. It's okay with me. I'd certainly rest easier. The old gal might need a little bit of persuasion, though. Later in the afternoon, Michael and Gail left for the hospital for a visit and then stopped by our house to tell us their plans before returning to Chicago. Michael told us that Pearl was willing to come and stay with us. The doctor had come in, verified that she had had a stroke, and said he wanted to keep her there for about a week. She kept saying something they couldn't understand. It sounded like cheddar, he said. Cheddar. What on earth could that be? I think all of us scratched our heads trying to figure it out. I usually get up around 2:30 to peek in on the kids, and we'd recently taken the side rails off of Jameson's bed so he could have a big boy bed, but he slept restlessly. Tonight he was on his tummy with one leg hanging out the edge, and I was repositioning him in bed when it came to me. Well, I'll be cheddar. Check cheddar, I thought to myself. She's worried about the cat. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And remember, the Principal Grandma says, you'll never know what comes next until you turn the page.